I should have stayed home. I don't even know why I let Mike drag me out to that bar. You need to loosen up, Ryan, he'd said, insisting that drowning my sorrows in cheap beer and loud music would somehow fix the growing tension in my marriage. I didn't tell him that Kate and I had been drifting apart for months. The late nights at work she never explained, the secretive whispers on her phone, and the sudden coldness in her touch all screamed that something wasn't right. But I wasn't ready to admit it, not even to myself. I was nursing my second beer when the world tilted on its axis. My cheating wife walked into the bar with her scumbag lover. Kate's laugh, once the sound I loved most, now grated against my ears as she leaned into a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, muscular, and dressed like he thought he owned the place. They didn't notice me at first, seated at a table in the corner, obscured by shadows. But I saw everything. The way she touched his arm, the way her eyes sparkled with a joy she hadn't shown me in months, it was like a dagger twisting in my chest. And then, they sat at the table next to mine. I froze, torn between the urge to confront them and the desire to sink into the floor. Before I could decide, he got up and walked over to me. His smug grin stretched wide as he clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Well, cuckold," he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery, "how does it feel to watch her when she's no longer yours? She's my toy now, and I can do whatever I want with her. I'm heading to the restroom, but when I get back, you better be gone." The audacity of his words ignited a fire in me. My fists clenched under the table as he walked away. My chest heaved with the effort to contain my rage. Kate hadn't even flinched. She sipped her drink, her eyes skimming the crowd like nothing had happened. I stood and approached her, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. "Does it bring you pleasure to publicly humiliate me like this?" I asked, my voice low but razor-sharp. Kate turned to me, her lips curving into a smirk I barely recognized. "What's your problem, Ryan? Maybe if you weren't so boring, this wouldn't have happened." Before I could respond, her lover returned. "Hey, bastard, you're still here," he jeered, his tone thick with contempt. Something in me snapped. Without a second thought, I employed a move I hadn't used since my days in the military. His arm twisted under my grip, and a sharp crack echoed through the room. He fell to the floor, clutching his arm and screaming in pain. The bar fell silent. All eyes were on us, but I didn't care. Kate stood, her face a mask of fury. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed. But I was done. Done with her lies, her betrayal, and the humiliation she thought I'd quietly endure. I turned and walked out of the bar, leaving her and her broken lover behind. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in months, it wasn't from fear or confusion, it was from clarity. It was time to take back control. The cold night air hit me like a slap to the face as I stepped out of the bar. My chest heaved, and my mind swirled with everything I'd just seen. The pain of Kate's betrayal sat heavy in my gut, but it was the fury that drove my steps as I marched to my car. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Of course, it was her. "Kate, we need to talk. Now." "Kate, you're acting insane, Ryan." I tossed the phone into the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Insane? The nerve of her to accuse me of losing it when she was the one who had shredded every ounce of trust between us. I sat there, replaying the scene in the bar. The way she laughed with him, the casual disdain in her eyes as she looked at me. That wasn't the woman I'd married. The woman I fell in love with wouldn't have let another man mock me like that. She wouldn't have kissed another man's cheek while I sat a few feet away, dying inside. But this wasn't about who Kate used to be. This was about the person she had become, and what that meant for me. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "What the hell is wrong with you, Ryan?" she snapped, her voice sharp with anger. "You broke his arm. Are you out of your mind?" What's wrong with me? I hissed. You walk into a bar with some scumbag, let him humiliate me in front of everyone, and I'm the one with the problem? Are you hearing yourself right now? You didn't have to attack him. God, you're so dramatic. Dramatic? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call standing up for myself? Maybe if I'd done it sooner, I wouldn't be in this mess. There was a pause on the line. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, show some shred of remorse. But when she spoke again, her words drove another knife into my heart. Well, maybe if you weren't so predictable and boring, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. I almost dropped the phone. Predictable? Boring? Was that her excuse for blowing up our marriage? You're unbelievable, I said, my voice low and trembling with anger. After everything I've done for you, for us, this is how you repay me? By blaming me for your selfishness? Selfishness, she shouted. You think I'm selfish for wanting to feel alive again? You don't get it, Ryan. You've been checked out for years. All you care about is your stupid job and your stupid routines. I needed more, and you weren't giving it to me. I sat there, stunned into silence. It wasn't just her words, it was the venom in her tone, the utter lack of guilt. She wasn't sorry. She didn't care that she destroyed me. Kate, I said finally, my voice cold, we're done. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded. It means you can stay with your scumbag boyfriend and enjoy whatever thrill he gives you, but I'm not going to be your safety net anymore. I'm done being your backup plan. She started to say something, but I hung up before the words could land. I wasn't interested in hearing more of her excuses. I drove home, my thoughts a chaotic mess. Memories of our wedding day flashed in my mind, the way she'd smiled at me, her eyes full of love and promise. How had we gone from that to this? Had I really been as absent as she claimed, or was that just another lie to justify her actions? When I got home, the silence in the house was deafening. The picture of us on the mantel mocked me as I walked past it, the smiling couple in the photo now strangers to each other. I ripped the frame from its place and shoved it into a drawer. I sat on the couch, my head in my hands, trying to process what came next. Divorce was inevitable, but the thought of unraveling our life together, dividing up the house, the finances, the memories, made my stomach churn. How had it come to this? Then I thought about her lover, his smug face and the way he'd called me a cuckold like he was daring me to react. I didn't regret breaking his arm. If anything, I wished I'd done more. But violence wouldn't solve my problems. I needed to think strategically. The next day, I took the first step. I called a lawyer. Ryan, it's good that you're calling now, the attorney said after I explained the situation. The sooner we act, the better. Do you have access to your financial records, joint accounts, anything that might indicate hidden funds or suspicious activity? Suspicious activity. The phrase hit me like a freight train. Kate had been acting strange for months, and I'd ignored the signs. How much had she been hiding from me? I spent the rest of the day digging through bank statements, emails, and her social media accounts. What I found only added fuel to the fire. There were unexplained withdrawals, hotel receipts, and messages that left no doubt about the extent of her betrayal. By the time I was done, my resolve was solidified. This wasn't just about ending our marriage, it was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring she faced the consequences of her actions. And I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The next morning felt surreal, as if I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. But the growing pile of evidence on the kitchen table was mine. Bank statements, text screenshots, hotel receipts, it painted a vivid picture of a double life Kate had been leading. Each detail was a fresh wound, and yet I couldn't stop digging. It was like scratching an itch I couldn't reach, every discovery hurt, but not knowing would hurt more. I was halfway through compiling everything when the front door burst open. Kate stormed in, her face flushed with anger. "What the hell is this, Ryan?" she snapped, waving her phone in my face. "You blocked me? You won't even let me explain?" I stared at her, my exhaustion giving way to a cold fury. "Explain what? How you thought I wouldn't notice the late nights, the secret phone calls, or the way you'd practically jump out of your skin every time I walked into the room? Don't insult me, Kate." Her expression shifted, her initial rage faltering as I spoke. But then, true to form, she doubled down. "This is what you do, isn't it? You play the victim instead of admitting your part in all of this. Do you think I wanted to cheat? Do you think I wanted to go behind your back?" I couldn't believe the audacity of her words. "You didn't just go behind my back, Kate. You turned it into a spectacle. That man humiliated me in front of an entire bar, and you sat there like it was some joke." She crossed her arms and scoffed. "Oh, come on. You're acting like a little bar fight changes anything. It's not like you've been the perfect husband. Do not try to flip this on me," I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. "Whatever issues we had, you could have talked to me. Instead, you decided to rip our marriage apart because what? You wanted something new and exciting?" Kate rolled her eyes, a smirk playing on her lips. "New and exciting? Maybe, Ryan. But let's not pretend like you didn't see this coming. You've been emotionally absent for years. I was lonely, and..." I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. "Spare me your sob story, Kate. Loneliness doesn't justify betrayal. And it sure as hell doesn't excuse parading your affair around town like some twisted badge of honor." Her smirk vanished, replaced by a hard glare. "Well, maybe if you weren't such a control freak, I wouldn't have needed to find someone who actually made me feel alive." I laughed bitterly. "Control freak? That's rich coming from someone who's been controlling the narrative of our life behind my back. But you know what? Keep blaming me, Kate. It makes it easier to see who you really are." The tension between us was suffocating. She stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to crumble under her accusations. But I was past that. "Do you know what's funny?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "I found the hotel receipts. The texts. All of it. So whatever excuse you think you can give me, just know I've already seen the truth. And you know what? It's uglier than I ever thought you could be." For a moment, she was speechless, and in that silence, I saw the cracks in her facade. But then, just as quickly, she snapped back. "Fine. If you've already decided I'm the villain, then I guess I have nothing else to say. But don't pretend like you're some saint. You checked out of this marriage long before I did." I shook my head, exhaling a bitter laugh. And there it is. The deflection. The lack of accountability. The classic Kate move. "Well, you know what? You're right. I'm not a saint. But at least I can say I was faithful." Her face hardened, and she grabbed her purse. "I don't have to stand here and listen to this. If you're so eager to play the victim, go ahead. But don't expect me to grovel for your forgiveness. You're not worth it." And just like that, she turned and walked out the door. The silence she left behind was deafening, but it was also a strange relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't second-guessing every word, every action. The air felt lighter, even if my heart felt like it had been put through a shredder. I stared at the table full of evidence, the weight of it sinking in. There was no fixing this. Kate wasn't just unfaithful, she was cruel. The person I had built my life with was a stranger, and she'd burned every bridge back to the person I thought I knew. That evening, I met with my lawyer. "Ryan," she said after hearing my story, "you have more than enough grounds for divorce. But we'll need to act quickly to secure your assets and ensure she can't manipulate the situation further. Do you have any joint accounts or property? I nodded, sliding over the documents I'd collected. She doesn't know I've been gathering this. I wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row before she pulled any stunts. My lawyer smiled faintly. Smart move. Let's make sure she doesn't blindside you. When I got home that night, I expected the house to feel emptier, but it didn't. If anything, it felt clearer, like a fog had lifted. For the first time in months, I knew where I stood. I wasn't going to let Kate's betrayal define me, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The suffocating weight of uncertainty had lifted, replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. If Kate thought she could walk all over me, humiliate me, and walk away without consequences, she was dead wrong. First on my list was financial security. The lawyer had been thorough. She laid out every scenario Kate might try to exploit and the steps I needed to take to protect myself. I spent hours freezing our joint accounts, securing my assets, and making sure nothing was left for Kate to manipulate. Every call I made, every document I signed, was a reminder that I was taking control of my life again. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kate. Kate, we need to figure out the house. I don't want to fight about it. I smirked at the irony. After all her antics, now she wanted peace? I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer. Let her deal with it. I wasn't about to waste another second playing into Kate's manipulations. But as the day went on, my anger simmered. It wasn't enough to just end things cleanly. Kate hadn't just broken my heart, she'd dragged my dignity through the mud. She deserved a taste of her own medicine, and I was just petty enough to give it to her. That evening, I called Mike, my best friend, and told him everything. Mike wasn't the type to sugarcoat things, and his reaction didn't disappoint. She did what? He yelled. Ryan, you're handling this way better than I would. If it were me, I'd be spreading her dirty laundry all over town. I laughed, but the idea lingered. Mike was joking, mostly, but there was something satisfying about the thought of exposing Kate for who she really was. She had no problem flaunting her betrayal. Maybe it was time the truth caught up with her. Later that week, an opportunity presented itself. A mutual friend, Jessica, reached out to check in. She'd heard rumors about the bar incident and wanted to know what had happened. Normally, I wouldn't air my dirty laundry, but this time, I didn't hold back. She cheated, I said flatly. Not just cheated, paraded her affair in public. The guy even mocked me to my face. She sat there and let it happen. Jessica's jaw dropped. Are you serious? I can't believe she'd do something like that. Oh, believe it, I said. And don't worry, I'm making sure she doesn't get to rewrite the narrative. People deserve to know the truth. Word spread fast. Within days, everyone in our circle knew what Kate had done. The whispers and sideways glances she used to reserve for me were now aimed squarely at her. I didn't stop there. I started gathering everything I could to strengthen my case for divorce. Pictures, texts, bank statements, anything that showed her betrayal in black and white. The lawyer assured me that with this kind of evidence, the settlement would heavily favor me. It wasn't about the money, though. It was about making sure she didn't walk away from this unscathed. One evening, about a week after the bar incident, Kate showed up at the house unannounced. I opened the door, immediately regretting it when I saw her standing there. She looked smug, as if she thought she still had the upper hand. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the living room. Make it quick, I said, crossing my arms. She spun around, her hands on her hips. What exactly do you think you're doing, Ryan? Telling everyone about our personal business? You're making me look like the bad guy. I couldn't help but laugh. You are the bad guy, Kate. Or did you think your little affair made you the victim? She glared at me, her lips curling into a sneer. You're pathetic, you know that? You can't even handle this like an adult. Instead, you're running around playing the scorned husband, crying to anyone who'll listen. Her words stung, but I refused to let her see it. Call me what you want, Kate, but at least I'm not the one who blew up a marriage because I got bored. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You're going to regret this. You think you're clever, spreading your little story around? You're nothing, Ryan. And once this is over, you'll still be nothing. For a moment, the anger rose in me like a tidal wave. But then, just as quickly, it ebbed. Her words didn't matter anymore. She didn't matter anymore. I took a deep breath and stepped back. Get out of my house, Kate. You're not welcome here anymore. She laughed bitterly. Fine. But don't think this is over. As she walked out the door, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. It was over, at least for me. Whatever game she wanted to play, whatever revenge she thought she'd get, it didn't matter. I was done letting her control me. That night, I sat alone in the living room, sipping a beer and reflecting on everything. Kate's betrayal had broken something in me, but it had also lit a fire I didn't know I had. I wasn't just surviving this, I was reclaiming my life. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally moving forward. And no matter what Kate did next, I was ready. The morning after Kate's latest stunt, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. Her threats, her lies, her smug arrogance, they no longer intimidated me. She wanted a fight? Fine. But it wasn't going to be on her terms. My first call was to my lawyer. Good morning, Ryan, she said briskly. I trust you're ready to move forward? More than ready, I replied. What's our next move? She explained the process, filing for divorce, freezing assets, securing evidence to ensure I wouldn't be left with the short end of the stick. I was already ahead of the game, having compiled everything I could find. The hotel receipts, messages, and even witness accounts from the bar incident were all neatly organized. Excellent, she said. This will make things much smoother. I'll draft the initial petition and file it by the end of the week. Have you considered your stance on the house? That question lingered in my mind long after I hung up. The house wasn't just a piece of property, it was a symbol of everything we'd built, now tainted by her betrayal. But as much as I wanted to cling to it out of spite, I realized it wasn't worth the emotional toll. If walking away meant leaving behind the weight of what had happened, so be it. Later that day, I ran into Jessica again, the mutual friend I'd confided in. She wasted no time pulling me aside. Ryan, she said, her voice low. You're not going to believe this, but Kate's been running her mouth. She's telling everyone that you're the one who pushed her away, that she only cheated because you were emotionally abusive. I clenched my jaw, the familiar sting of betrayal settling in my chest. Figures, I muttered. She's always been good at playing the victim. Jessica put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Don't let her get to you. The people who know you, really know you, can see through her crap. But if you need me to back you up, you know I will. Thanks, I said, genuinely touched. But I think it's time I start handling this myself. That evening, I decided to take a proactive approach. Kate wanted to control the narrative? Fine. I'd let her spin her web of lies while I dismantled it piece by piece. I started by contacting key people in our circle, friends, family, even co-workers who had been caught in the crossfire of her deceit. I didn't air every detail, but I made it clear, Kate's actions had consequences, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite history. Most of them were supportive, offering words of encouragement and expressing their disbelief at her behavior. But there were a few who hesitated, their loyalty to Kate evident in their carefully worded responses. Ryan, one mutual friend said cautiously, are you sure this is the best way to handle things? I mean, airing everything out in the open. I cut them off, my tone firm but measured. I didn't ask for this, but I won't let her walk all over me. She made this public when she brought her lover into that bar. All I'm doing is setting the record straight. A few days later, I got a call from Kate. It was unexpected, but I wasn't surprised by her tone, sweet, almost apologetic. Ryan, she began, I've been thinking. Maybe we should talk, just the two of us. No lawyers, no drama. Just us. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, gauging her intent. It was classic Kate, playing nice when it suited her, always with an angle. What do you want, Kate? I asked, my voice flat. She hesitated, then sighed theatrically. I just think we owe it to ourselves to have one honest conversation. We've been through so much together. I barked out a laugh. Honest? Coming from you? That's rich. Ryan, please, she said, her tone sharpening. I'm trying to fix this. No, Kate, I snapped. You're trying to save face. There's a difference. She was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold. Fine. Have it your way. But don't think for a second that you'll come out of this unscathed. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone. It was almost laughable, the way she alternated between victim and aggressor, as if she couldn't decide which role suited her better. The next day, I met with my lawyer to finalize the divorce petition. As I signed the papers, a strange mix of emotions washed over me, relief, sadness, and an undercurrent of anger that refused to dissipate. It's normal to feel conflicted, my lawyer said, as if reading my thoughts. Divorce is never easy, especially under these circumstances. But you're taking the right steps. Trust the process. Trust the process. Easier said than done. But as I walked out of her office, a sense of determination settled over me. This wasn't just about ending a marriage, it was about reclaiming my life. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number. Ryan, it's Mark. Can we talk? Mark. The scumbag. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. But curiosity got the better of me. Make it quick, I replied. His response came almost instantly. I think we both know Kate isn't who she pretends to be. Meet me tomorrow. I have something you'll want to hear. My pulse quickened as I read his message again. What could he possibly have to say? And why now? I didn't trust him, but the prospect of uncovering more of Kate's lies was too tempting to ignore. The meeting with Mark was set. Whatever he had to say, I knew it would be another piece of the puzzle, a puzzle I was determined to finish, no matter how ugly the picture turned out to be. This was far from over. I arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, my mind racing with possibilities. Mark's text was vague, but his tone suggested he wasn't reaching out to gloat. That didn't make me trust him, far from it. A man who walks up to another's table and mocks him in public isn't exactly the pinnacle of integrity. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked Mark. His confident swagger was noticeably absent, replaced by a nervous energy that betrayed his unease. He spotted me immediately, hesitating for a moment before making his way over. Ryan, he said, extending a hand. I didn't take it. Sit, I said coldly. Mark sighed and pulled out the chair opposite me. Fair enough. I deserve that. I leaned back, arms crossed. Let's skip the small talk. What do you want? He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to find the right words. Look, I know I've been less than decent to you. And I don't expect forgiveness, but I think you should know the truth about Kate. I raised an eyebrow. The truth? That she's a liar and a cheater? Thanks, but I figured that out on my own. Mark shook his head. No. It's worse than that. For the next 20 minutes, he spilled everything. Kate hadn't just been cheating on me with him, she had a long history of manipulation and deceit, stretching back years. According to Mark, she had been juggling multiple relationships before and during our marriage, always keeping her options open. She told me you were controlling, Mark said. That you were emotionally abusive, that you didn't love her anymore. That's why I thought it was okay to get involved. But now I see it was all lies. I laughed bitterly. You needed her to lie for you to justify sleeping with a married woman? Mark flinched but didn't argue. You're right. I was an idiot. But it wasn't just me. There were others. She has this way of making you feel like you're the only one who understands her, like you're her savior. Then she turns it on you. As much as I wanted to dismiss him, his words resonated. I had seen that side of Kate, the victim, the charmer, the manipulator. It was how she'd drawn me in all those years ago. But hearing it laid bare by someone else was like having a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. Mark reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. This is everything I've got. Messages, pictures, dates. She didn't cover her tracks with me because she thought I'd never turn on her. I think she underestimated how much I'd regret all this. I hesitated before taking the folder, the weight of it heavy in my hands. As much as I despised Mark, his regret seemed genuine. But that didn't mean I was ready to let him off the hook. Why now? I asked. Why come to me after everything? He looked down at his hands, ashamed. Because she's already moved on. There's another guy. She's doing to me what she did to you. And it made me realize, she's not just hurting people. She's destroying lives. When Mark left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, flipping through the folder. It was damning. Every message, every photo, every receipt was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But as much as it hurt, it also gave me a strange sense of validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining the red flags or overreacting to her behavior. Kate was exactly who I feared she might be, and now I had the proof to show it. That night, I called my lawyer and told her about the new evidence. She was ecstatic. This is gold, Ryan. With this, we can push for a favorable settlement. She'll have no leg to stand on. I hung up, feeling a flicker of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was gaining ground. 2 days later, Kate showed up at the house again. I hadn't seen her since our last confrontation, and she looked surprised when I opened the door. Ryan, she said, her tone unusually soft. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, blocking her way. What's there to talk about? She hesitated, then sighed. I know I've made mistakes. But I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to try to make things right. I couldn't help but laugh. Make things right? Kate, you've burned this marriage to the ground. There's no going back. Her expression hardened. So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away? I stared at her, incredulous. You're the one who threw it away. And now you want me to play along with your redemption arc? No. We're done. For a moment, she looked genuinely hurt. But then the mask slipped, and the familiar venom returned. Fine. But don't think you've won, Ryan. I'll fight you every step of the way. I smirked. Good luck. You're going to need it. That night, I packed a bag and checked into a hotel. The house, the memories, the ghosts of what once was, it was all too much. I needed space, not just from Kate but from the life we'd built together. As I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, relief, and something else, freedom. Kate had taken so much from me, but she hadn't taken everything. I still had my integrity, my strength, and a future that was mine to shape. And as far as I was concerned, that future didn't include her. The morning after leaving the house, I woke up to an unexpected sense of calm. The sterile hotel room, with its crisp white sheets and bland decor, felt oddly liberating. It was a blank slate, untainted by the memories of Kate or the turmoil she had unleashed. I decided to take a walk and clear my head. The crisp air of early autumn filled my lungs, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. Each step I took was a reminder that I was moving forward, leaving the wreckage behind me. By midday, I had a plan. The first step was letting go of the things that no longer served me, starting with the house. My lawyer was already drafting a proposal for the divorce, and I told her to include my intent to relinquish the property. "It's a bold move," she said. "Most people fight tooth and nail for the house." "I don't want it," I replied. "It's just a reminder of what I'm trying to escape." "Let her have it if she wants it so badly." She nodded, impressed. "That kind of detachment will serve you well, Ryan. It's rare." That evening, I met up with Mike for a drink. We hadn't had a proper sit-down since everything started, and I needed his no-nonsense perspective. "You look better," he said, clapping me on the shoulder as I slid onto the bar stool. "Thanks. Feels like I'm finally making progress." He raised an eyebrow. "So, what's the game plan now?" I filled him in on the developments, the evidence from Mark, the decision to give up the house, the legal progress. Mike listened intently, sipping his beer. When I finished, he leaned back and shook his head. "Man, I don't know how you're staying so calm. If it were me, I'd be out for blood." "Oh, don't get me wrong," I said with a smirk. "I'm plenty angry. But I realized something: Kate thrives on chaos. She wants me to lose control, to play her game. The best revenge is not giving her what she wants." Mike grinned. "Smart. But don't let her mistake your calm for weakness." "Don't worry," I said. "I'm done being weak." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The legal wheels were turning, and every update from my lawyer brought me closer to freedom. Mark's evidence proved to be a game-changer, painting a vivid picture of Kate's infidelity and undermining any attempt she might make to spin the narrative in her favor. But even as I focused on the logistics, the emotional weight of everything lingered. Nights were the hardest, when the quiet gave way to memories of better times, times when I thought Kate was my partner, my anchor. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. There we were at the beach, laughing as the waves crashed around us. At a family barbecue, her arms wrapped around me as we posed for a group shot. And then, the one that hit hardest, a candid of her looking at me with what I thought was love. I deleted every single one. Kate, of course, wasn't done stirring the pot. A few days later, I got a call from Jessica. "She's been talking again," Jessica said, her voice tight with frustration. "Now she's claiming you're dragging your feet on the divorce because you're still in love with her." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Of course she is. Anything to make herself look like the victim." Jessica hesitated. "Ryan, I hate to bring this up, but she's also started spreading rumors about your mental health. Saying you're unstable, that you've been harassing her." My blood boiled. "She's unbelievable." "Don't worry," Jessica said quickly. "Nobody who knows you is buying it. But I thought you should know." "Thanks," I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "She wants to play dirty? Fine. I can handle dirty." The next morning, I filed a formal restraining order against Kate. My lawyer assured me it was the right move, not just to protect myself, but to establish a paper trail that would counter her lies. "She wants to claim you're harassing her," my lawyer said. "Let's see how that holds up when she's the one barred from contacting you." It wasn't just about the legal protection, it was about drawing a line in the sand. Kate had crossed too many, and it was time to push back. That afternoon, I received an unexpected text from Mark. "Mark, she knows I gave you the folder. Be careful." I stared at the message, my mind racing. What was she planning now? I replied, "What does she know?" "Mark, everything. She's furious. Said she'll make us both pay." I should have felt fear, but instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. Let her try. I wasn't the same man she'd manipulated and humiliated. 2 days later, I got another call, this time from Kate's lawyer. "Mr. Ryan," the woman said, her voice clipped and professional, "my client has expressed a desire to settle this matter amicably. She's willing to negotiate terms that should be mutually agreeable." I couldn't help but laugh. Kate's sudden shift in strategy was transparent. She was losing control, and she knew it. "I'll review the terms with my lawyer," I said coolly. "But make no mistake, I won't accept anything less than what I'm entitled to." When I hung up, I felt a sense of triumph. The tides were turning, and for the first time, Kate was the one scrambling. That night, as I sat in my hotel room, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The man I'd been when this all started, the naive, trusting husband who believed in Kate's lies, was gone. In his place was someone stronger, sharper, and unafraid to fight for himself. Kate had underestimated me. And now, she was paying the price. The divorce hearing arrived faster than I expected, yet I felt ready. My lawyer had prepped me for every possible scenario, and Mark's evidence ensured Kate's lies wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. The courthouse was a cold, sterile building, but to me, it felt like the place where I would finally reclaim my life. Kate arrived flanked by her lawyer, her usual smugness replaced by a veneer of forced composure. She barely glanced at me, her gaze instead darting around the room as if searching for a lifeline. For the first time, I saw her for who she truly was, not the confident, alluring woman I had fallen for, but a hollow shell built on deception. The hearing itself was uneventful, mostly procedural. My lawyer presented the evidence, and Kate's team didn't even attempt to dispute most of it. They knew they were cornered. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive, the division of assets leaned heavily in my favor, and the restraining order was upheld. Kate's face was a storm cloud when the judge announced the verdict. As we left the courtroom, she caught up to me in the hallway. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't over." I looked her dead in the eye. "Oh, it's over, Kate. And you've got no one to blame but yourself." With the divorce finalized, I began the slow process of rebuilding. I sold off what I didn't need, moved to a smaller apartment in the city, and threw myself into work. My friends, especially Mike and Jessica, rallied around me, making sure I never felt alone during the transition. One evening, Jessica and I were having dinner when she brought up a question I'd been avoiding. "So, are you going to date again?" she asked, her tone light but curious. I laughed. "Not anytime soon. I think I need to focus on me for a while." She nodded. "That's fair. But when you're ready, don't let what Kate did stop you from trusting someone again. Not everyone's like her." Her words stayed with me. Kate's betrayal had shaken my faith in love and partnership, but I refused to let it define me. I wouldn't let her take that from me too. One day, months after the divorce, I ran into Mark at a coffee shop. I hadn't seen him since he handed me the folder, and part of me wasn't sure how to feel about him. "Ryan," he said, looking genuinely surprised. "Hey." "Mark," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He shifted awkwardly. How are you doing?" "Better," I said simply. "And you?" He sighed. "Still picking up the pieces. She really did a number on both of us, didn't she?" I couldn't argue with that. "Look," he continued, I know I've said it before, but I really am sorry. For everything. I studied him for a moment, then nodded. Apology accepted. But let's not pretend we're friends. He gave a weak smile. Fair enough. As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure. Mark was a footnote in the story, not the villain. The true enemy had always been Kate, and I had already defeated her. Reflecting on the experience, I realized how much I had learned. I'd discovered the importance of self-respect, of setting boundaries and standing up for myself. I'd learned that love without trust is nothing more than an illusion, and that no relationship is worth sacrificing your sense of self. But most importantly, I'd learned that betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can strengthen you, refine you, and prepare you for something better. One evening, while sitting on my balcony and watching the city lights, I felt a strange sense of peace. The chaos of the past year was finally behind me, and the future stretched ahead like a blank canvas. I raised a glass to the night sky and toasted to myself, the man who survived, who fought back, and who came out stronger on the other side. Kate may have tried to destroy me, but in the end, she only taught me one thing: I'm unbreakable.